So what's going on between Jerusalem and Washington? Are we back to putting daylight between us? And if so, to what end? Joining me to discuss is research fellow at the Institute on Counterterrorism and the IDC Herzliya, Dr. Fadi Essmaeel, and columnist for Newsweek and editor of HistoryCentral.com, Marc Schulman. Thank you both so much for being with us. Now, do you think that the United States is right to resume payments to the Palestinian Authority to the extent that they are, payments that were cut during the Trump administration? Fadi, I'll start with you.
I wish it was a yes/no question. I hope that there are things happening behind the scenes, some understandings, some dynamics that we do not see in an overt manner right now. I would assume that there is something going on, perhaps something that has to do with the upcoming Palestinian elections, maybe something that has to do with the identity of the support to the replacement for President Abbas. I think there are a lot of information is missing, a lot of data is missing before we can say categorically it is a good move or a bad move. The main question is, do we want the Palestinian Authority to exist? That's the main question. And if the answer is yes, then there is no way away from supporting it financially and in other ways. If we think that we can give up on the Palestinian Authority, then that opens up the question that you have just brought up. So that really relies on or depends on President Biden's administration vision for the entire region. And we're still trying to figure out the signs to divine from the little clues we hear from various administration officials. How are they going to look at the Middle East as a whole so that we can understand or derive from it what would be the place of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in the Middle Eastern dossier as a whole? And there are many signs in Washington that seem to show us that the entire Middle East is being deprioritized even further than what it was during the days of President Trump. But again, we still haven't heard from anybody in the administration any clear set of principles upon which they will base their policies. Just, hints and suggestions.
So Marc, I want to turn to you if maybe you can respond to what Dr. Essmaeel just said and maybe include some of the context with respect to, certain congressional acts like the Taylor Force Act, which actually barred the United States from handing over certain payments over the salaries paid to terrorists by the PA.
At least as of the moment, both I think the United States and Israel want the Palestinian Authority to remain. So I think that giving them money was an obvious statement. I don't even think the money is being given directly to them. It's being given to hospitals and other USAID projects. Money is fungible, obviously. So the fact of the matter is, the United States cutting off all aid to the Palestinians was sort of, cutting off your nose to spite your face. Israel wants, anyone in Israel wants the Palestinians, generally speaking, to do better economically, to do better in terms of health and everything else. So the fact that they're getting aid is a good thing. The whole Taylor Force was a very nice political maneuver. It made everyone feel good, but it really, again, since money's fungible, really doesn't make any real difference, and it never really made a difference. It was political theater in the United States, and it was political theater here.
So if you think that it's
we've
this
gone
funding,
back and forth.
If this funding, assuming that, I'll take both of you at your word, assuming this funding is necessary, right, to keep the PA going, why do you think that it was pushed so quietly? We had $15 million that was pushed as COVID relief very publicly, lots of fanfare, and then $75 million, not clear whether that includes the 15, that was just passed kind of under the radar to Congress. Why do you think that is? That it was
because very simply, it's not a high priority. Biden wants to talk about infrastructure. He wants to talk about the pandemic. He doesn't want to be talking about the Palestinians. And Blinken is busy trying to create coalitions against China, redo America's coalitions in Europe. And this is just not a priority for anybody. So $75 million is, such small change these days when Washington is spending trillions of dollars, that it really wasn't a high priority item for anybody. And I don't think it was a conspiracy. I just think it was okay. We're going to give them some more money. It wasn't a big deal, and they weren't interested in making it a big deal because what was to be gained by making it a big deal? They didn't notify Congress. It's public. Just no big deal was made about it, and I don't see why they would make a big deal about it. To whose advantage is it?
All right. So, Fadi, do you think that this effort will work? Will the Palestinian Authority actually respond positively to this and come back to the negotiating table? Or is this, just another reason to stall and say, hey, thanks for the payments, I'll wait for the next one?
Again, it is not a black and white situation. Negotiations happen all the time behind the scenes. They exchange messages all the time. $75 million to help control COVID-19, which is in everybody's best interest, globally speaking.
Well, it was the 15 for COVID, and then the 75. It's the details of how that's going to be spent has not really been said.
In the end, this is not what's going. I agree with Mr. Schulman. This is not what's going to change the dynamics or anything. It could be a very nice opening salvo on the side of the Biden administration, perhaps show some level of goodwill. Yeah, that could be something like that. We still need to know more about what do they plan to do. I mean, vis-a-vis the Middle East as a whole and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in specific. You have to understand the Trump administration's legacy in the Middle East is enormous. We had some diplomatic breakthroughs here that were almost impossible to believe. And that happened because of another big issue, which is the Iran issue and the enormous pressure that was put in Iran. Now, this is a new administration that looks at things in a very different way, which is fine. It's all right. But they have to explain, okay, so what is the overriding determinant of U.S. policies in the Middle East? Or quite frankly, there are much bigger fish to fry today in the Beltway.
We're not in the center of the world for the moment. We've been in the center of the world for so long. We like being in the center of the world. Right now, we're not in the center of the world. Everyone's looking elsewhere. So we have to get used to that.
All right. On that note, I'm gonna end it. Thank you both so much, though, for your insights, Dr. Fadi Essmaeel Marc Schulman. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure.